Thank you. Welcome. Good morning, and welcome to the Morgantown Area Partnerships Virtual Roundtable with our United States Representative of West Virginia's 1st Congressional District, David B. McKinley. And first off, we're going to go over some housekeeping notes. This session will be recorded. The recording will be made available to all participants and posted to the morgantownpartnership.com website and our social media channels. Questions will be welcomed in the chat box, and you can click on the chat icon in the bottom toolbar. Microphones will be muted for the duration of the presentation. However, later on, the partnership will welcome attendees to use not only the chat box, but will possibly, if you raise your hand, will provide an opportunity to speak as if there's an opportunity, as many as we can. As spring arrived in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic brought challenges to our lives and livelihoods none of us ever expected. I want to thank Congressman McKinley for joining us today, because only together can our elected leaders work to make our region and state better. I want to thank him for taking this time to listening and explaining some complex issues to our constituents as to how we can get through this time. Morgantown Area Partnership is a public-private alliance comprised of the Chamber of Commerce, Montague County Development Authority, Morgantown Area Economic Partnership, and the Neighborhood Revitalization Cooperation known as Sunnyside Up. It works for the betterment of the economic business community development in Montague County and the greater Morgantown area. We have approximately 500 business members in the community, and we focus on those issues at the state, local, and federal levels that make a difference not only to our membership, but the entire region. Today's virtual roundtable is open to our members, and many members surely know what the partnership about, but I always make that introduction for our web viewers later on. Also, many of our members know very well our engineer congressman. He's needs no introduction. He's a very good friend of our partnership and was a regular visitor to the chamber before it became the partnership. And I want to thank him again for being a visitor here today. So thank you, Congressman, for being here. I also, the partnership has been in existence since 2019. And a group took 8 years to, basically it's been 8 years ago when the group got together and decided we'd be more efficient to all come together and have the partnership. And we're fortunate to hire a favorite son of the state from West Virginia who traveled and learned how to run a partnership. And we're fortunate to have a leader such as our president and CEO Russell Rogerson, who has done an admirable job leading us through this COVID time period, who will now, I would proud to introduce him now, who will speak about this time and our partnership. Russ?
Thanks, Eldon, and welcome to everybody. We at the partnership, have been really working hard to get these linkages so that even though, as Congressman McKinley and I were talking about earlier, we can't do this face-to-face, which is where we prefer. This is the next best thing, and we always appreciate, David, you're reaching out to us. And as a fellow Wheeling, born and raised individual, we appreciate what you do for us at the Congress. I was going to talk a little bit about the impact on business, but we certainly have a lot of strong showing here today from those businesses that are living the impacts on a daily basis. So I'm not going to go into the great detail with that, but I will tell you that, the partnership fortunately has fared pretty well. Our reduction in membership has not been as significant as we feared at the beginning of this. But I will say that we're also carrying a lot of those people forward because we really believe that the longer we can stay together and share information like this, the better our businesses will be. So with that, I'm going to step aside because I'm as interested in hearing from our businesses as you are. And Eldon, I'll turn it over to you to get the question and answers started.
Okay, thank you. I've chose some different areas. I wanted to start out with the general recreation area. I know a lot of recreation has fallen from my grandson's baseball and entertainment to going to movies had to close. But I asked our Black Bears director, Matt Dreher, to speak to those issues. Matt?
Sure. Thanks for having me on here this morning, Eldon. I appreciate it and be able to talk to the membership group here in a whole. I will say that, regarding the Black Bears and just, I would say kind of that entertainment group, it was, hit hard, last year and going in this year. Some of the obstacles that we need to overcome is one, we meet all the health guidelines brought to you by the state and by the county. Making sure that everything that we do, it meets everything else that's going on with state, with other occupancy and other large events. Make sure we can streamline that plan with other events to make sure that everybody feels safe and comfortable, and make sure that we're not being repetitive where we need to, and be able to work with other people in the state and the county to make sure we're just, not just spinning our wheels, just spin our wheels. Our biggest concern right now is, you look at WVU, they'll be able to have some of the football games and some of the basketball games at a lower occupancy. With us coming in the summertime with the Black Bears, and I'll speak on behalf of W Baseball as well, we don't know exactly what those obstacles are going to be and those challenges regarding what our attendance can be at these venues. Congressman, what do you think the state can do, or you in general can kind of help, with us predicting or working with some sort of numbers that we can give our fan base to say, hey, this is what's going on at the ballpark. This is what we feel comfortable with doing, to make sure when we open up our gates, the fans and the community feels comfortable attending.
Matt, if you can get this thing organized, how is that going to work out with WVU's baseball schedule? Are you going to be able to work out the conflict between the two?
Yeah, as of right now, I know a little bit has changed regarding what the Black Bears season was like and what it's currently. As some people may or may not know, we end up Major League Baseball did change the way minor league baseball system works. And at one time, we were part of the New York Penn League. That league no longer exists. Major League Baseball cut that out and eliminated 42 teams across the country, which was about 25% of the minor league baseball teams. So that was a tough pill to swallow. And Congressman, I thank you for all the work that you've done to make sure that the Black Bears still had a home here in in West Virginia. At one time, we didn't have a place. We didn't have a league. We didn't have anything. So thank you for everything that you've done with the Black Bears and moving forward. I think just with us and WVU, there will be a little bit of overlap, but we have a great relationship with Matt Wells and Coach Mazie. So I think we'll be able to overcome those obstacles moving forward internally regarding, the games being played and making sure that everything is great regarding that. But, I still, moving forward, I'm a revenue guy. I got to see what the revenue's like. I have to watch my expenses. And I know that's a concern for us. I know that's a concern for a lot of other of my friends who do, planning for events, outside events, and they're on the same kind of limbo. Like, what do we do? What do we promise our spectators and our fans? What can we do to, the business that support the Black Bears? What do we do, with our season ticket holders? There's a lot of, uncertainty regarding everything that's going to happen. I understand that the daily numbers in WVU or not WVU in West Virginia are going down, so that's positive. So a lot of it's like, is there anything that Washington can do regarding moving us forward? We all took a huge financial hit last year. Is there anything else that is there any additional funding or support that or other areas we can tap into regarding the large revenue losses that we received last year? I look at myself, for example. We still ran the ballpark. We still have payroll. We still did things. We didn't sell any tickets. We didn't sell any sponsorship. So my revenue was zero and my expenses was 100%. So I'm kind of speaking for a lot of other partners and people I know with. So do you have any kind of plans or insight that we could do to moving forward to 2021?
Well, I think that what we're trying to do to help you out, and for all businesses, is to get this vaccine in people's arms as rapidly as possible. But we're not making the headway I was hoping for, because in Washington, what they want to do is be fair. So they're distributing it on a population base rather than on areas that are more prone because of age and health conditions. They're doing it on a fair basis. The problem I testified before a committee the other day about this was that in West Virginia, we're the second highest vaccination rate in the country, behind Alaska. And there are some states, and we're using 87%, maybe 90% now of the vaccine that we're given. Those are all positive. But then you go to a state like Illinois, their vaccination rate is about half. It's 53%, not 87, excuse me, not the high. And they're not using their vaccine. They're hoarding it to make sure that they're putting it on a shelf so that they have enough for the second vaccine. So other states are not doing the same thing. That's why the sooner we can convince the HHS that West Virginia uses the vaccine. We had Clay Marsh come testify the other day about this. I think it's going to be, for all businesses, they're going to be able to open up more. West Virginia is leading the country. And it's nice to be on that side of the table for a change, to see that we're doing the right things. But as a result, even though with that, they're still not giving us more. Even though we're putting it in people's arms better than all, but Alaska is the only one that's leading us in vaccination rate. They're still not giving us more vaccines because they're still shipping it to California, New York, Illinois, and other large population areas. So we're hopefully that can be worked out. As we get more vaccines, there's another one coming online now that we'll be able to get that one out to people, because we know that if people get vaccinated, they're going to be more comfortable to start going out to restaurants, shopping, going out to see the Black Bears, or seeing other events, and our basketball stadium can open up, our football stadium can open up again, so people can enjoy that. Vaccination rate. Go ahead, Eldon, you got another question? Maybe not.
Yes, the next area I thought was significant was the hoteliers, and Leah Carbone.
Hi. Well, I first wanted to say, like you said, Congressman, the state and the governor's office and our local health department has been instrumental, and I can't thank them enough for guiding us through 2020. And even with things such as, we have individuals that are traveling in for funerals or memorial services, and how to guide them through the safe process of staying in our hotels and still able to honor those loved ones as they stay. I've been able to call the governor's office multiple times and the state and local health department and get questions answered immediately to continue to keep people safe as they travel into Mon County, which is huge. So everything that you've done to support them, I can't thank you enough for that. As a hotelier, of course, across the nation, we have seen multiple deficits our costs have stayed the same or have increased, and our employees and our teams have not stopped working. They have worked all the way through 2020, and they are on the side of offering beds and places to stay and food to our healthcare workers and our National Guard. So my biggest concern is, I want my staff to be able to get back to somewhat of a normalcy and be able to go to the Black Bears and support them. And their biggest concern is we have to keep everybody safe, because we are right in front of everyone.
Get to the point. What can we do to help? What do you see the best thing we can do to help?
So what I would like to see is a lot of our lodging industries and our hoteliers to be moved up on the list of the vaccines. We are serving a lot of your healthcare workers and National Guardsmen, and we are still later on in that line.
Well, I thought the hoteliers and the hospitality industry was able to get more of the PPP money. Did you apply for the second tranche there?
Yeah, so we've had the PPP and all of those things, and that has helped tremendously. It's just our individuals, those costs of, of course, they're wearing masks and they're doing glove changes and doing a lot more than what we have ever done in our industry. But it's also the concern of, can we go home and can we go out, or are we risking everyone?
Well, what I'm trying to say back on the hospitality industry, I thought through PPP, not PPE, the PPP, you were able to get 3.5 times payroll.
We were. You're correct there.
And that, we tried to do that because we had another meeting, and others have across the country, that we've heard you all are hit some of the hardest. So we increased the amount of money that you could get through the PPP program by 3.5, whereas the rest of it are limited to 2.5 level. So I just want to make sure that's working. But the frustrating part is, first, have you checked to see whether or not you get a second loan from that? Are you able to get, the first one was in the CARES Act, and then we had the second one in December. Are you able to get a third?
I know that we've applied for the second one and we got the second one. The third one, I know we've applied for it. We haven't received it. So those are things that have helped a lot in our cost and things along those lines. And the thing that I see on our hotel level is our team members. Our team members are still living the same life that they lived in 2020. They're still working tremendous hours and still trying to protect their families, and also protecting, they're going through those things of balancing, like everyone is, with their kids at home and things along those lines. So really my biggest question to you is, do you know if you said you're pushing for the vaccines to come to West Virginia. Yes. Do you know if there's anything that we can continue to do to support you and from our hoteliers and our lodging industries to see that we get considered for vaccines as soon as we can?
Probably the best is keep pressure on the HHS, the administration, and us in Congress. We've been trying some different techniques to try to get more money to those states that are using it. Remember, we've got almost 90% of the vaccines we get are in people's arms, but that's not true around the country. The other states are holding back. That's not going to be effective. So we've got to find a way to get the money. What we're trying to do right now, our mission, is to try to get HHS to send money or send the drugs to those states that are actually implementing the drug, so that we can build up the herd immunity. And then life will be much better for it. People will have more confidence. But it's a comment that I made last year several times about it, that when this COVID first hit, this exponential growth in fear of what this was. Well, we pretty well curbed that. We've curbed that, but we've not curbed the fear and the resistance to people to try to get back in society. We slowed the growth, but we've not been able to flatten the fear that people have. I know many families that have not ventured out, have not been to a restaurant, have not been to a store since March of last year. We've got to get them so that they have comfort that we've got all the techniques. If they keep their social distancing, keep a mask and wash their hands, they can be part of society again. But somehow there's this indication of fear that's out there that they can't get over. And so we flattened the one thing, we got to flatten the fear too. And we haven't done that. So keep the pressure up. And one, we'll try to get more vaccines in the arms of people. I don't like it, the fact that vaccine's sitting on a shelf someplace in Illinois.
Well, thank you. And I do appreciate everything you all have done for the hospitality industry. You all have done amazing support, especially in our state. I mean, I've been in the industry for a very long time, and I've heard other people over the nation and in our state, our governor's office, our health departments and everything, and our lodging committees have offered so much support and so much guidance and so much help with us maintaining it. So thank you.
The next I've asked is the restaurants. Bron Kyle. Bron.
Hey, how you doing? Congressman McKinley, appreciate the opportunity of setting this panel up. And Eldon, thank you for calling me and, inviting me to come on here. Well, my name is Bron Kyle. I represent Blue Ridge Hospitality. We run a few different restaurant concepts here in Morgantown. Obviously, restaurant industry is one of the industries that's hardest hit with this pandemic. We're doing with the governor's guidelines. It's been a constant up and down battle over the last 12 months. We did receive, a lot of restaurant business received the first round of PPP. Congressman, a lot of people are having issues with the second round of PPP. I'm not sure if you have heard it. I believe this time around, they're running a lot of the information through every single federal database. I've heard instances where somebody had a penalty on a late filing a long time ago, maybe a few $100 fine. Penalty was not paid, and the PPP has gotten denied. Now, the restaurant owner had tried to contact the IRS to get that penalty taken care of, and you cannot even get a hold of the IRS. So the whole thing is stuck. Somebody had leftover student loan payments, a couple of $1,000s that they hadn't closed out, and PPP loans are getting denied because of that. So the first time around, a lot of people didn't have issues with the PPP, but the second time around, it seems like there's a lot of denials. Out of all my friends and colleagues in the industry, I probably know of only one or two people who have gotten the second round of PPP this time around. So that is something I would like to bring to your attention.
Well, Ron, let me focus on that. One, if you know of people that are having some difficulties, let us know more specifically. We've got constituent service. We've got we've got 4 people doing constituent service in West Virginia. So they're in Morgantown. We're at the Sunset Center, and we can work on you. We can go to work for it. So let's treat it as a constituent service. It's not like they can't get into a VA, or they're having trouble getting workers' comp or unemployment comp, or they're getting something. But this is something that is all across the country. As a matter of fact, you're raising a point that's very interesting about the PPP on the second tranche. The first one was almost gone 100%. But the second one, starting in December and now in January, February this year, under a different administration, they're putting some different controls or something on. We don't quite understand it.
Correct.
And as a result, we put $900 billion into the second in December to help out. It's 64% of the PPP money has not gone out. So that's why the folks in this new one that we're dealing with, they don't want I don't agree with it. They don't want to put any more money into PPP because the congressmen are thinking when it's not being used. Well, they're trying to use it, but you're demonstrating that there are some restrictions now that are popping up that do that. So I think that that's one thing we can take back to Washington and try to make sure people understand. It's not that they're not interested in using the PPP. It's just these new restrictions that the Biden administration has put in. Maybe that's having some kind of impact. I don't fully understand that yet through the IRS because they should be apolitical. But something's happening in this one compared to the first one. The first one was eaten up. This one, 64% still in the bank. So
correct.
Find out what we have to do. So please, let's try to help your industry and any others. Call our office with something specific, and we will be able to follow up with the IRS and see if we can unleash it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
One last observation, and Leah kind of brought it up. So in Morgantown, Mon County in particular, the restaurant industry, the service, hospitality industry, the employees, the workers really got hit by the virus right around the end of July of 2020. Okay. So pretty much we have seen all across the board in the entire county, every restaurant started closing down for a week or 2 weeks, and their entire staff kind of went through the cycle, And since then, restaurant workers in this county has not seen a major outbreak because everybody got it. You have some type of herd immunity or something like that. So, and then I have read articles and things where they say, once you get it, your immunity is about, 3 to 6 months. It's just an observation on my part that, that 6 months is about to expire. And, people are beginning to go out to restaurants again. So to her point, the service industry will, it will be better for the community for the service industry to start getting these vaccines because, once that herd immunity kind of goes away, people start getting it because, right now, this Valentine's Day, we saw tremendous public support for restaurants. I think people came out, haven't come out in a whole year. So I think people are getting tired and they're coming out. So, we don't want a situation where, people start, spreading again. So it's just something.
Let me ask one last question. We're going to try to get more vaccines. Obviously, we heard you.
Right.
And I think Jim Justice is trying to do the same thing in down Charleston. But how did that work out last year when we were paying employees $600 a week to stay home? Was that how did that do for you? Trying to get people to come back to work?
It was very, very difficult. I mean, I couldn't even blame some of these people. $600 is not what they usually made. When we reopened back up, we had an extremely difficult time to find employees. That definitely hurt a lot of small businesses from opening completely.
Well, the reason I'm asking that is because in this new bill that's coming out, this new COVID, I don't want to get too much of it, but they've got included again, renewing that at $400 a week. I'm afraid even at $400 a week, it's going to be detrimental to employers to get people to come back to work.
I agree 100%. I feel like it should be something to make somebody whole. What you have been making the year prior, when you exceed that, then, I've had people who would have never filed unemployment, like just regular servers who are going to college, that kind of thing, they would never usually file unemployment. They were getting, $700, $800 a week, and they just had a great time. And it was great for them, but it didn't really help anything, I think,
Well, I'm curious to see, Brian, and I want to get to the next question. I'm curious to see what's going to happen. It's coming up on tax time in April 15th.
Right.
People don't realize that getting that $600 a week is taxable.
Oh, yeah.
And there was nothing taken, there was no withholding. So they're going to be hit with some pretty good numbers on that. And the same thing if we do it again, 400, there's no withholding on that. So I think people are going to be struggling around on tax season, how they get through it. But thank you for your comments.
Thank you again, and I appreciate you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I'm going to move on. As people know, the airlines and the airport is very important to our continued growth in the area and in the region. And I've asked Mark Sestari from Southern Airways Express to also participate. Mark?
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us, Congressman. It's a real honor to be with you this morning. Southern Airways is the fastest growing commuter airline in the country. We're about a $60 million company, which sounds like a lot, but in the airline world, we are a small business. I'm happy to report, despite the devastating impact of COVID on our industry, Southern has fared very well. We instituted pay cuts, progressive pay cuts when COVID first hit, with those of us at the senior level taking the biggest cut, and we made modest cuts on our line employees. And because of that, we did not have to furlough or fire a single employee. We returned everyone to full pay once the CARES Act money arrived. And we have been profitable every quarter during COVID. And we appreciate everything that the government has done to help us. In terms of some specific areas that we could use your help, we have been working very hard in Congress to adjust some of the legislation that affects the Essential Air Service program. Here in Morgantown, we provide 6 flights a day to Pittsburgh and to the Washington, D.C. area. And beginning on June 1st, we're going to start serving Washington Dulles Airport. The DC Metro is going to start running out to Dulles, and we think folks will be well served by being able to fly nonstop from Morgantown to Dulles, hop right on the Metro, and be at Union Station in 40 minutes. There's 3 areas specifically that I would like to work with you and your staff on. First of all, just to punctuate what the previous speaker said, I think the supplemental unemployment payment has had a very bad effect on our company. Basically, we have a difficult time hiring in Morgantown, and the $600 a week or $400 a week payment is a real disincentive for folks to come back to work. And I think it's ill-advised, and the money is better given to companies to keep them in business, to create real jobs, or to preserve the employees that they have now. The 3 areas that I'd like to work with your staff on, the large airlines have not fared well during COVID, and they have had major furloughs and reduction in fleet size. Because of this, many of the large jet carriers are now moving into the Essential Air Service area. We literally are bidding against 50-seat jet operators who come in with proposals for service that are millions of dollars more than ours. And if the community wants a shiny jet twice a day instead of our 9-passenger plane, DOT is awarding them these expensive subsidies. Essential Air Service is supposed to be just that, essential, to keep small communities connected to the national transportation system, and awarding large contracts to deep-pocketed jet carriers when small carriers like ours really depend on this business to survive seems ill-advised. The 2 other areas, we would like to provide service to Camp Dawson. Many of the folks that fly in there for training and whatever, they're unable to fly on 9-seat aircraft because of a very outdated, archaic regulation. The entire commuter industry now is 9-seat aircraft. The days of the 19 or 30-seat aircraft are gone. And we would like DOT to look at that legislation and help us out. The last area we need help with is costs at the big airports. A lot of the large hub airports received millions and millions and millions of dollars in relief from the government. And they have a system of pricing where it's basically small, medium, and large. If you're a jumbo jet, you pay one price. If you're a narrow body jet, you're another. And if you're a regional, you pay another. Well, we're a 9-seat operator, and in big airports, we're being charged the same as a 76-seat operator, which makes it very difficult for us to make money. we would like some kind of linkage between the EAS program and having hub airports allocate a certain amount of real estate to small operators, and also to charge on a per seat basis, not by broad aircraft category size. I'm sorry to get into all the detail, but I wanted to give you as much background as I could. And we are in DC every couple of weeks, and I would love to meet with you and or your staff if possible. And thank you very much.
Let's do that, because I think you raised some very good points that we can do something about this, particularly about this 9-seat. That's an old rule that needs to be updated for that. And then I don't know why you're charged the same as the 76. I like the idea of charging by number of seats rather than the size of the plane. You should be penalized this way. I hear you on that. Did I also hear that, or read last week or so, that you're gonna have flights to Chicago?
No, to Washington Dulles.
Well, okay, I heard that, but I thought you have. I thought someplace you were in, maybe this summer or so, you were going to do that. Maybe it was someplace else. But
well, we currently fly to Pittsburgh, and we're evaluating whether or not to move to another hub. A lot of folks in the community are used to driving to Pittsburgh to get their flights. There are a large number of people who are saying they'd like to see us fly to DC and to a more distant hub.
Yes,
we're evaluating that right now.
You also have. Do you have some de-icing equipment? What's the status there down there at the Morgantown Airport?
No, we've addressed that issue. The new airport director has been terrific, very responsive to us, and we are well served there at the moment.
Okay, so you got de-icing then. Good. Thank you. You're going to follow back up again. We're going to have more of a conversation with you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Contact you off. Thank you.
Yes, next I ask especially retail and training area, Nick Domenici from Defense in Depth. Nick.
Good morning, Congressman. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
Thank you for
together in Wade's garage a long time ago.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We did. It was a good time. So I appreciate that and all the follow up on that as well. That was fantastic working with Wendy. So I kind of have interest in several businesses, and there's already been a lot discussed. Actually, I'm a partner with Mr. Kyle in a restaurant. My wife owns a small bridal boutique here in Morgantown. And then, of course, my affiliation with Defense in Depth and our security consultancy, Active Threat Solutions. We have been affected across the board, and I'll keep it short, just by lack of foot traffic. So the majority of our corporate consulting was done in office space. You know, everyone's working from home now. On my wife's side of things, no one is having weddings. And in the restaurant side of things, our capacity and foot traffic, and as you spoke to, the fear aspect is still there. So ultimately, we all want to see the vaccine. But as a successful businessman yourself in your own firm, what do you feel that is the most vital aspect for both West Virginia small business and West Virginia moving forward as we come out of this, or hopefully start to come out of this COVID-19? Is there any one thing you could put your finger on and say, as a whole, in all these different areas, that is vitally important to our success?
I think it's going to be just getting the foot traffic again, getting people back on the streets, that they're comfortable about going out. And the vaccine, that's why it's so important. We focused on that, on the vaccine, and getting that in people's arms so that we can get the herd immunity up, and people will find out as our numbers continue to drop, somehow we got to get the word out, and that it's safe to be part of society again. So that's where we're focused in Washington, getting people's arms and getting our traffic back up again. But if we start putting these $400 a week reimbursement or assistance to people, I'm afraid that perpetuates that fear, and people aren't going to get back to work. If the employees won't come back to work, we're going to have problems. So I want to get our schools reopening. I think that's, you asked me kind of quickly on a thing. One is just getting back to normal as quickly as possible, and schools are emblematic of that. If we can get our schools opened up again, people will start seeing that our parents won't be staying at home to take care of their first and second, third graders. They're going to be back to work. So we've got to get that back. Our society opened up again. But I've got to hear how we must not be doing as effective a job. So I'd like to hear from you. How can we do a better job opening up our schools and getting our businesses back open up again? What's missing in this?
I think one, obviously, the faster we can get the vaccine rolled out, and you're doing everything you can, and we certainly appreciate everything that is happening in DC. I think you hit the nail on the head with the fear. I think when you have folks who may not, they heard one thing in March of last year, in April of last year, and then what is true and what is not true. So first thing that comes to my head would be maybe some marketing as far as the efficacy of the vaccine, how fast it's being rolled out to our state, some type of campaign that will educate our patrons who are visiting the restaurants, who are visiting the sporting events, who are going to school, who are sending their children to school. I have a young son, and he's at the age to where he's ready to start preschool, but there are concerns. So some type of information campaign that gets that out there, that's saying, okay, we are making major strides in addition to just giving people the actual vaccines. This is the information that accompanies that. I think would be very helpful just to educate the state residents and business owners.
Yeah, I think justice has to continue to show how the rates are dropping right now in West Virginia. But you made another statement in your earlier comment that maybe I should have asked Braun that question when I was talking to him. But I'll just say universally to everyone, I'd like to understand in Morgantown, since we're such a hospitality oriented, a lot of restaurants. I've never seen a town with more restaurants and good places to eat in Morgantown. But what happens if Congress institutes a $15 minimum wage? How would that affect your wife or your wife's business in the weddings?
Dramatically, especially now. I don't employ as many as Braun does. I mean, Braun, between all his restaurants, has over 100 employees. So, but even on a small scale, I mean, my wife's shop is her and two other folks. So you're talking, a significant increase in expense when revenue is already historically down. I mean, her business is getting better, but the wedding industry has been crushed by COVID as well. The venues, the restaurants, the dresses, the tuxedos, it's all been affected. So to hit another expense increase when revenue is low and expenses are high or higher or as they have ever been, that would be very, very detrimental to not only myself, but to, I believe, all of the business owners on this call. That is something that is going to add a considerable burden to what we're already experiencing.
But Nick, it's coming. This is going to be a real test. And I don't mean to be partisan. I'm just sharing what the facts are. We're in the minority, and the majority in Washington is pushing for this $15. They've got the votes to do it, and they control the Senate and they control the president. The president is saying he supports the $15. So we may be, if the Senate doesn't block it over there, we could very well see $15 on people. I was at a business yesterday, auto repair, and he just said they would lay off 9 people in a car wash area of their dealership if the $15 comes in place. So that's 9 people are going to lose their job. This is just confusing. If $15 would be great if people could afford it. $15 in New York City for a minimum wage is a lot different than $15 in Morgantown, West Virginia, or in Iowa or Illinois or someplace. It's just, I think we have to be careful. I wish that we could continue to just keeping it primarily a state. Let the states continue to increase. West Virginia is not the highest, but it's raised up below the minimum over the years. So I don't want to see this 15. I'm really troubled with this because I think it'll perpetuate more problems for small businesses, particularly in West Virginia, and a restaurant and hospitality. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know how the nonprofits will be able to endure something like this. So it's a real crisis. So I hope that maybe we can, Eldon can ask this question for all your members. If you could have a polling of how we might react to $15 minimum wage, what effect it would have on your business, because this vote's going to come up this week. And right now, as much as I want to vote for some of these packages that are going to help out our businesses, I'm really troubled. I don't want to support something that includes a $15 minimum wage. So it's one of those times that they put something into a bill that's a poison pill, because they know you want to vote for the whole bill. So they put in something that they're comfortable and try to force it. Well, I'm not going to take the bait. I'll vote no, unfortunately. But I know our businesses with PPP and other programs, we want to be able to help out. We want to help out our states and local governments in providing some resources. We want to get the vaccine out to more people. But why are you putting in what does $15 have to do with COVID? It doesn't. So, Eldon, let's go. Wendy, we got one more question.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Try to do that. I wanted to, I know we had it scheduled to 10:30. Does anyone want to raise their hand? Do we have a hand raised for anyone? Amy, do you see? I don't see anyone raising their hand. Is anyone in the chat box? I got a question.
Eldon,
Michael's
Michael's
got his hand up.
Okay, Jonathan. Michael, did you say?
Yes, Beafor.
Oh, Michael Beafor.
Okay. Good
From
morning,
Beafor
Congressman. Thank you.
Landscaping. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks
And then
again
I
for
see
being.
another one too after him. Go ahead, Michael.
All right. Thanks again for being here this morning. I wanted to touch base with you a little bit about the H-2B temporary guest worker program, which you've come out in support of the last couple of years. Your office as far as signing on to letters supporting our legislation to improve the program. A lot of businesses in North Central West Virginia use this program, and it was put into effect in 1985, and the rules governing that have become pretty cumbersome and pretty archaic. But I just wanted to give you a couple of quick pieces of data and then ask a question on some upcoming legislation. Even with COVID, over the past 3 months, seasonal businesses across the country have not been able to attract local workers to these positions. No matter how much money or time we spend recruiting, it's just not a position that is interesting or viable to a lot of American workers because they're temporary positions. So in 2020, there were 66,000 visas available, but 62,300 visa requests were left unfulfilled just because a cap was reached. So there are a couple of things happening this year. The last year and a half, there were other priorities in Washington, D.C., so this really wasn't addressed or paid attention to by Congress. But this year, we're working on two directions. One is to actually increase the visa cap from 66,000, which was instituted in 1985, to allow more of these temporary guest workers to come into the country. And a lot of people on the call here, Dan, Braun, Leah, have sort of experienced our service and understand that when we don't have our guest temporary workers, not only does the quality and the service suffer of seasonal businesses, but the local economy really suffers from them not buying into the goods and services sold here in the community. So raising the cap is one piece of legislation we're trying to get through. By the end of the month, Senator Graham on the Senate side.
Mike, if I can interrupt, is there a bill that someone have that we could go talk to them about?
Well, there's two things coming up. One, Senator Graham is actually going to introduce a bill by the end of the month that'll make its way over to the House side, which is requesting that the H-2B program be put under the umbrella of the H-2A program, agriculture, instead of seasonal workers, because the agriculture H-2A program does not have a visa cap. There's some other issues that need to be addressed as far as that. So that's one thing that's going to be introduced. Another thing that's introduced every year is returning worker exemption, which means if you've qualified for a visa in previous years that you are not subject to the cap in the H-2B program. And that usually gets attached to the omnibus bill that comes out in the end of the year, the total budget bill. And we'll be working on that toward the later part of the year. So those are two things that are happening. We just kind of like to get on your radar and ask for your support. And the other thing is see if you have any advice on how to approach this current administration on how we might get one or two of these things into their immigration legislation.
We just reached out to, her name's Alicia, that she used to work, oddly enough, she was chief of staff for Lori Trahan, with whom I worked with on the baseball issue. Alicia is now our liaison with the White House, and we reached out to her to begin a dialogue so we could have more direct contact. We had ample contact with Trump. I was in the Oval Office numbers of times, but under this, as you say, in the new administration, I'd like to develop a rapport with him, because whether I like it, he's going to be the president for 4 years. Let's figure out how we work together and make sure he understands the impact some of the decisions are in West Virginia. And maybe he could help us, or someone could lead us in finding some kind of solution about the visitor visa program, the H-2B. I know we've been there before. We've signed off on it before. I think we need to continue to do that. But I'd rather something. I like your idea of just raising the cap from 66,000. We ought to figure out how we might do that.
Okay, is there somebody in your office I could just send some data and information to today that
Mike Hamilton is my chief of staff. Okay, now that would be one. Now, yeah, that's probably our best way to get to him. But let's just follow back up again. We'll just have it continue our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it just has to keep in front of Congress as this moves through, because it really is not a major priority. But seasonal businesses across the country, I mean, they're shutting down almost daily because of lack of the ability to find workers.
Yeah, well, I'd like to find out. I'd like to see how they're going to. This whole immigration thing is opened up a can of worms here in the last month. We're going to see how that thing shakes out. But this program has been around. It's worked. It's been effective. We need to continue to support it and see it and expand it a little bit. So let's see what we can do with that. But thank you for that.
Congressman, if we can impose on you for just a little bit past your time limit there. I know you have at 11 o'clock. If I can get, Jonathan Board had one more question, and then I had a brief question on the chat. Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. Congressman, thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. I'll make this very quick, considering your time. You helped us immensely solve a hospital situation, both in northern part of the state and central part of the state. I know that this is not going to be an isolated problem. And I was just wondering if you and your staff, considering your knowledge, extensive knowledge on this specific issue, do you know, is there any type of legislation or anything that we can support to perhaps be proactive in dealing with this? We're actually seeing that this may happen again at least once or twice this year in the state of West Virginia. I'd imagine it happens in other states as well, where we can perhaps on the front end deal with some of these bad actors before the communities they serve are hit so hard.
Well, there's no real clear picture about that, Jonathan. As you well know, that across the country, small hospitals have been closing left and right. I saw in another state that just said over the last 7 years, 9 hospitals had closed in that state. It was a small state like West Virginia. There's a whole host of issues. I think your one is trying to identify bad actors, how they come in and take advantage of a community. We've seen that happen in West Virginia. It's hard in the private sector for us in government to try to stop an investor from coming in when there's no other investment. So I probably would need to hear more, Jonathan, what you might suggest, because across the country, it's maybe one of the things we talked about was trying to preserve our hospitals by one is getting their reimbursements higher than they are now. Our hospitals are, particularly our critical access hospitals, and a third of the hospitals in West Virginia are those critical access, by definition, critical access. They're 25 beds or smaller, and across the country, they're the ones that are most vulnerable. So even though they're reimbursed at a slightly higher amount, we've been crafting legislation and trying to get some support for it to markedly increase the reimbursement for hospitals in that classification, so that they can survive in this, because there's still a fear. Some people are just reluctant to go to hospitals. So even now, it's exacerbated the problem. So what, other than additional reimbursement, what are some suggestions you might make?
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the easiest ones. I think that the challenge is the fact that you're dealing with private entities that maybe are the only ones that are coming in. Perhaps there could be some sort of disincentive for nefarious actors coming in, or maybe even some harder, I don't know, punishments for those that were to leave these communities in such dire straits. But I think you're right. I think perhaps it's the best way is to make sure that they're protected by making sure that they get some ROI, especially in those communities that can barely support them to begin with.
Yeah, I'm trying to prevent the hospital from selling in the first place. They're part of the culture, they understand it, so we're trying to find one. But unfortunately, one of the other things that I got in a big fight this past week about, that was over opioids. That problem, the substance abuse, is still out there, and until the last quarter last year in 2020, more people in West Virginia were dying from drug abuse than they were from COVID. So we still have a real problem with that. And there are a lot of those people coming in. The emergency room visits are up 30% since the pandemic started, 30%. And prior to the pandemic, they were up 20%. So we know the drug abuse problem is still out there. And a lot of these people coming in, they're uncompensated, the hospital. So we're trying to find a way to do that. And I offered an amendment to redirect some money over to substance abuse, because this year in the total amount is $1.75 billion. But I tried to get $3 billion more put into that. And it was a party line vote. They voted it down on party line. And Jonathan, the problem I'm seeing for our hospitals is that I think the substance abuse is still eroding your bottom line. But let's, just for the record, for people to understand, Congress is so fixated, and rightly so on COVID. We're spending a tremendous amount of money. It's costing the economy around $16 trillion. Those are numbers that are just mind-boggling. But we're spending about $6 trillion. That's what we've invested last year. $6 trillion all went to the bottom line on debt that we just, to the federal government. So we're spending $6 trillion, but on opioids and drug abuse, we're spending $8 billion. Now think about it. Across the country, there are 5 times more people dying from COVID than substance abuse, and that's bad. That's a horrible number of 400,000 plus. 5 times the amount of money, or 5 times the amount of deaths. But we're spending 750 times more on COVID than we are on substance abuse. So something's disproportionate in where our focus is. I just think our hospitals and healthcare providers all across this country should be getting reimbursed and more to help out as we deal with this drug problem, because it's not going away. If anything, as we're finding out, it's actually getting worse. So I'm hoping, Jonathan, we can do that, but I'm tired of this party line vote on things, because that's not getting. Maybe it's my fault. I'm not educating people enough about the fact that the drug problem is still prevalent all across this country, and I've just got to do a better job selling it and make people aware of it, because it's affecting our hospitals. Our hospitals can't survive if they're not reimbursed for the substance abuse problem they're dealing with. So thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, sir.
The one question that actually addressed the question you had, Congressman, in the chat goes to the minimum wage question. It says, what is the congressman's suggestion for the minimum wage to be a state level issue? Which I think probably reflects a lot of business-minded peoples, that minimum wage ought to rest at the state level, which more accurately reflects the economic situation the businesses faces rather than at the federal level. And I don't know how you can make the other Congress people recognize that or not.
I think most of them do. I can't speak for all five of us on it, but it, the 10th Amendment says that it states' rights where we need to relegate more of these things back to the state. It's worked very well for us. We had a minimum federal minimum wage, and it's worked effectively. Other states, if they wanted to go higher, they could go higher, and they've done that. California, New York, Massachusetts have all got a higher minimum wage. That's fine. In West Virginia, we're not at, I think it's $7.25. We're at $8 now, maybe $8.25. I'm not exactly sure what it is today, but it's a state level. Better for people in the state to understand the impact it's going to have on the economy of West Virginia than to have a bunch of bureaucrats in Washington or people there pushing something down our throats that is going to have a detrimental impact. I'm trying to decentralize. I don't want this decision made in Washington. I want it made in Charleston, and we'll set our standard. Maybe we can increase state dollars, but let the state of West Virginia make that determination. I believe that's the fairest way to go about doing it.
Yeah. Well, we really thank you. You're a real good friend of the Morgantown Partnership and the business community here in Montague County and Preston County. We represent that as well, and we work very hard to get our membership issues out and addressed. And you're always willing to be a friend and be here, and we really appreciate your service to our community.
Well, thank you. We got through 7 questions. I got Gabby maybe, but I'm trying to there's so much going on in Washington, even though it's remote, and I'm going to be back in DC again next week, but there's so much going on. I want you to understand what's happening, because it's easier for me to come to you all than you to come to Washington.
Well, we appreciate that. And I want to remind everybody that this meeting will be on our website and on Facebook, and it'll be available for all participants to have. I would like to turn it over to our president and CEO, Congressman, unless you have any closing remarks.
Well, let me just say that I mentioned about the constituent service. If there's something, any one of your members, and you got 500 members down there, if there's something they need, please let us know. I can't anticipate. I've got to hear what's on your mind if there's an issue. So call our office in Washington. That number is 225-202-4172. Yeah, I'm sorry, I messed that up. 202-225-4172. 202-225-4172. And we will be able to answer your concerns. And if it's legislation, we'll go to work. If it's constituent service, we'll go to work for it. That's, I think, our best thing we can do is help people out like this. So have them give us a call. Thank you.
Certainly. I want to thank you again. And of course, anyone that has any additional questions, they can always send me the question. I'd be happy to forward them as well. I would like to ask our president and CEO, Russell Rogerson, to close us out. Russ?
Thanks, Eldon, and thanks, Congressman McKinley. Great session today, and we're more than happy to host these ongoing throughout the year. We have a very active government affairs committee. I see quite a few of them participating in this session here today. So we're always open to putting you together with the business community, because what government does impacts business, and we want to make sure that we can continue being a very prosperous and growing community, and with your help, we're confident we're going to continue to do that. So thank everybody today for taking the time out and asking some really good questions and some excellent points here today that we'll definitely be following up and following through on through our government affairs and to the board of the partnership. Let's keep this conversation going, and please don't hesitate to reach out to Eldon or I if you do have other issues and questions that we need to get addressed. So thank everybody for participating today.
I hope everyone just be safe. Be safe. Keep your social distance. Wear a mask and wash your hands. And we'll get through this. We'll get through and get your shot. If you have fight the line, get your shot. Okay, Russ. Thank you very much.